The applause started before I could even lower the presentation clicker. 20 executives around the mahogany table stood and clapped. The CEO nodded from the head of the room, his silver glasses catching the overhead lights. Someone actually whistled. 9 months of work had just been approved. A $3.8 million deal with Garrison Tech, our biggest contract in 5 years. My boss Mark Sullivan stood beside me at the front of the room, hands clasped together like he'd just won an award at a ceremony. "Thank you all," he said, his voice cutting through the noise with practiced confidence. "I rebuilt this client relationship from scratch. It took strategic vision and countless late nights, but we got there." I still held the clicker in my right hand. My throat went dry. The weight of the small device suddenly felt heavier. He continued, gesturing with open palms. "Sometimes you have to take risks others won't take. You have to see opportunities where others see obstacles. That's what leadership means." Not once did he say my name. The applause grew louder. Mark smiled at the board members, shaking hands across the polished table. I stood frozen in place, slides still glowing on the screen behind us showing 9 months of negotiation timelines, strategy pivots, and milestone achievements. My timelines, my strategy sessions, my calls with Garrison's CFO at 6 in the morning. Then Mark looked directly at me across the width of the table, and smiled even wider. The room suddenly felt too hot, like someone had turned up the thermostat 20 degrees. My chest tightened with pressure I couldn't release. My ears started ringing with a high-pitched buzz that made everything sound like I was underwater. I forced myself to breathe slowly through my nose, counting to 4 on each inhale. In 3 seconds flat, I replayed the last 9 months in my head like a movie on fast forward. 6 a.m. conference calls with Garrison's team in Seattle while it was still dark outside my apartment. Airport lounges where I revised proposals on my laptop, surviving on bad coffee and vending machine snacks. My nephew's 8th birthday party that I missed entirely because Mark needed urgent revisions to a pitch deck I had written from scratch the night before. All of it gone. Erased. Deleted from the record like I had never existed. The board members gathered their leather folders and tablets, murmuring to each other. Mark laughed loudly at something the CFO said, throwing his head back. Someone patted his shoulder firmly. The energy in the room centered entirely on him like he was the sun and everyone else was just orbiting. I carefully set the clicker on the table with a quiet click. My hands were steady, which surprised me. But something cold and sharp had settled deep in my stomach. Then Mark turned back to face everyone, straightening his burgundy tie. "That's what real leadership looks like," he said clearly. The word echoed in my skull. Leadership. My name is Claire Bennett and I'm 31 years old. I had been at Meridian Solutions for 6 years. Started as a junior account manager right out of college, working in a cramped cubicle near the copy machine. I worked my way up slowly to senior strategist through late nights and weekend work. I wasn't the loudest person in meetings or the one who told jokes. I didn't play golf with executives on Saturdays or join the after-work drinks crowd at Murphy's Bar downtown. But I was good at my job. Really good at understanding clients, reading contracts, and finding solutions that worked for everyone. When Mark assigned me the Garrison Tech account 9 months ago, he called it a development opportunity in his office. The company had been a client years before but left after a bitter pricing dispute with our old VP. Mark said if anyone could bring them back, it might be me. He emphasized the word might like it was a long shot. Maybe. I took that challenge seriously, more seriously than anything I'd done before. I needed this deal to work. Not just for the company's bottom line, for me personally. Because landing a contract this size meant one thing that mattered. Promotion to Director of Strategic Development. The position had been open for 4 months. 3 people were competing for it, and I was the youngest candidate by 5 years. I needed something big to prove I belonged at that level, that I deserved a seat at the leadership table. This deal was supposed to be exactly that. It was supposed to change everything about my career. This wasn't the first time Mark took credit for my work, though it was the boldest. 6 months earlier, I had closed a smaller contract with a regional supplier called Patterson Industries. Nothing huge. $400,000 annually. But it was a genuinely tough negotiation. I spent 3 solid weeks going back and forth on payment terms and delivery schedules. When Mark presented the win to our VP in the monthly review meeting, he said, "We secured the Patterson account." Like it was a collaborative team effort with equal contribution. I had been standing right there beside him. He glanced at me once for half a second and added, "Claire handled the paperwork side of things." Paperwork side. Like I was a secretary filing documents instead of the person who negotiated every single term. I told myself it didn't matter at the time. That was just how corporate America worked, right? Managers presented wins to leadership. Individual contributors did the actual work. That was the hierarchy everyone accepted. But this time was completely different. This time he didn't say we. He didn't even mention my name as part of the team or give a polite nod in my direction. He said I over and over. I rebuilt the relationship. I took the risks. I led the negotiations. This wasn't partial credit or shared recognition. This was outright theft of my work. After the meeting ended, co-workers crowded around Mark in the hallway outside the boardroom. Someone from finance, a guy named Trevor, shook his hand enthusiastically. "Incredible work, Mark. Seriously impressive. That commission is going to be sweet." Commission. But on a deal this size, the lead strategist earned a percentage bonus. I hadn't even thought about that part yet because I was still processing what just happened. A woman from marketing named Stephanie smiled brightly at me. "You must be so proud of him, Claire. What a mentor, right? You're lucky to learn from someone like that." Proud of him. I forced a smile that felt like it might crack my face. Yeah. He worked really hard on it. The words tasted like metal in my mouth, bitter and wrong. Mark accepted congratulations like a politician after winning a major election. Modest nods. Firm handshakes with eye contact. That practiced humility that somehow made him seem even more impressive to people watching. Then he turned and caught my eye across the crowd of people. "Claire," he called over the noise, raising his voice slightly. "Got a minute?" People stepped aside to create a path. I walked toward him slowly, my heels clicking on the polished marble floor in the silence that followed. He gestured toward a small conference room off the main hall with glass walls. "Let's debrief quickly," he said with a casual smile. I followed him inside without saying anything. He closed the door behind us with a soft click. Mark leaned against the conference table casually, arms crossed over his chest. "That went well," he said, looking satisfied. I didn't respond. I just stood there holding my notebook. He continued, completely oblivious to my silence. "Look, I know you put in a lot of hours on this project. I appreciate that, I really do. But you have to understand how these things work in corporate environments, Claire." My jaw tightened involuntarily. The board doesn't want to hear from mid-level strategists about the details. They want to see leadership at the front. Someone who takes ownership of outcomes. That's what I did in there today. "You took ownership," I repeated slowly, tasting each word. "Exactly." He nodded enthusiastically like I was finally getting it, finally understanding the game. Leadership presents the vision. Execution supports the implementation. That's the structure. Your execution. Support. That word landed differently than the others. It wasn't just corporate jargon or business speak. It was a label. A permanent box he was putting me in. "You supported this project really well," Mark added, his tone almost patronizing. "That's valuable work. Don't underestimate the importance of support roles in successful organizations." Something inside me shifted in that moment. Not broke, shifted. Like a lock clicking into place or a door closing permanently. I nodded slowly and deliberately. "I understand completely." Mark smiled, visibly relieved. "Good. I knew you would get it. You're a team player, Claire. That's exactly why I like working with you." He opened the door and walked out confidently. I stood there alone for a long moment, staring at nothing. Then I left too. That night, I sat at my kitchen table staring at my laptop screen in the dim light. The apartment was completely quiet. My roommate Jessica was out with friends. The only sound was the steady hum of the refrigerator and distant traffic outside my window. I didn't cry. I had expected to cry, honestly. On the drive home, I thought the anger and humiliation would turn into tears at some point. But it didn't happen. Instead, I felt calm, cold, sharply focused. I opened my email application and went straight to my sent folder. Scrolled back 9 months to the very first message I sent when Mark assigned me the Garrison account. Subject line: Garrison Outreach. Initial strategy. I read through it carefully. Then I opened the next email in the chain. And the next one after that. Months of correspondence. Proposals I drafted from scratch. Revisions I made after tense client calls. Strategy pivots when their CFO pushed back hard on pricing structures. All sent from my email account. All time-stamped with dates and times. All documented. I created a new folder in my email system. Named it simply Timeline. Then I started dragging messages into it methodically. One by one. I worked until 2 in the morning organizing everything into perfect order. Every email I sent to Mark with subject lines like updated proposal attached, or Garrison feedback, needs immediate revision. Every calendar invite I personally created, Claire, Garrison strategy call, or CB, client discussion. Every single version of the contract with tracked changes showing my edits in blue text, my comments in the margins. I didn't save these documents originally because I thought I'd need them someday as evidence. I saved them because I'm naturally organized. Just how my brain works. Keep detailed records. I label folders clearly. I archive important files systematically. I never imagined I'd actually need them as legal evidence or proof of my work. But there they were. Hundreds of emails. Dozens of attachments. Meeting notes with my handwriting. Call summaries I typed. A complete, undeniable record of 9 solid months of work. The timeline was crystal clear. Mark's name appeared in exactly 3 places. The initial email assigning me the project, forwarding my progress emails to the VP with brief messages like, FYI, progress update from the team, and scheduling the final board presentation. That was literally it. His contribution was pure logistics and forwarding. Mine was everything else. Strategy, execution, relationship building, problem solving. I leaned back in my kitchen chair and stared at the glowing screen. Turns out being organized is real power. 2 weeks after the board presentation, I had my annual performance review scheduled. Mark scheduled it for a Tuesday afternoon at 3. I walked into his office with my notebook, ready to discuss my professional goals for the next year. He pulled up my evaluation on his desktop computer screen. Overall, you're doing well, Claire, he began in a neutral tone. Solid contributor to the team. You consistently meet deadlines. You handle client communication professionally and appropriately. Solid contributor. He scrolled through the evaluation form, checking boxes in various categories. I'm rating you, meets expectations across most categories here. You're definitely a strong team player. Not exceeds expectations. Not emerging leader. Team player. He clicked through to the summary section and started typing while talking. I'm writing that you've shown good growth in supporting complex projects, he said while his fingers moved across the keyboard. But there's still room to develop higher-level strategic thinking skills. Strategic thinking. The Garrison deal was nothing but pure strategy from start to finish. He saved the document with a click and turned the monitor screen toward me. Any questions about anything? I shook my head calmly. No. This is very clear. He smiled and nodded. Great. Keep up the good work, Claire. As I left his office, I noticed the wooden plaque mounted on his wall. It read, Visionary Leadership Award. Mark Sullivan, 2022. 3 weeks later, the company sent out an announcement about an opening for Vice President of Client Strategy. The email went out to the entire department first thing Monday morning. It was the promotion everyone had been quietly waiting for. The role included a $40,000 annual raise, a permanent seat on the leadership team, and direct oversight of all major client accounts. By lunch, everyone in the office knew Mark was the clear favorite. He had just landed the massive Garrison deal. He had 15 years of experience with the company. He had personal relationships with half the board members from years of golf outings. In the break room, two co-workers were already talking about it like it was decided. "Mark's definitely getting it," one said confidently. "Yeah, no question whatsoever. That Garrison contract sealed it completely." I stirred sugar into my coffee slowly and said absolutely nothing. The application process required a formal pitch presentation to the board. All candidates had to present a detailed portfolio of major wins and outline their strategic vision for the department. Mark's centerpiece would obviously be Garrison Tech. A $3.8 million deal he closed single-handedly through visionary leadership. Then HR sent a follow-up email to all candidates later that afternoon. The last line read, "Please submit supporting documentation for all referenced projects." I read that line twice. Supporting documentation. Mark was in an exceptionally great mood the entire next week. He joked loudly with people in the hallway. He took longer lunches at expensive restaurants. He had that relaxed, easy confidence of someone who had already won and was just waiting for the official announcement. On Thursday afternoon, he stopped by my desk unexpectedly. "Hey Claire, got a second?" he asked casually. I looked up from my computer. "Sure, what's up?" He sat on the edge of my desk, making himself comfortable. "So, I'm putting together my VP pitch presentation. I need to compile all the supporting materials for the Garrison deal. Emails, proposals, contracts, the whole comprehensive package." "Okay," I said carefully. "Think you could pull that together for me? You know where everything is organized." He smiled that easy smile. "Just need it looking clean and professional. Board-ready quality." I nodded slowly. "You want me to compile all the files?" "Exactly. Shouldn't take too long." "You're incredibly organized." He stood up and stretched. "This one's in the bag, Claire. VP by October for sure." He walked away whistling a tune. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a flash drive. The one that already had everything on it. Complete. Unedited. Perfectly organized. I said yes quietly. I didn't change anything in the files. That was the absolute key to everything. I didn't alter documents. I didn't add sarcastic comments in the margins. I didn't manipulate timestamps or edit anything to make Mark look bad. I simply compiled the raw files exactly as they existed in reality. Every email in perfect chronological order. Every proposal with tracked changes showing the original author clearly. Every calendar invite with my name in the title field. Unedited truth. I created a clean, professional folder structure. Phase 1, Initial Outreach. Phase 2, Negotiation Process. Phase 3, Contract Finalization. Inside each folder I included absolutely everything. The full email chains. Not just Mark's brief forwarded messages. The original detailed messages I sent first. The original strategy documents. With metadata showing exactly who created them and when. The client communication logs. Showing which phone number Garrison's team called repeatedly. My direct office line. I burned it all onto a disk carefully, labeled it neatly with a marker, and put it in a manila envelope. Then I added one more critical thing. The original negotiation email chain with Garrison's CFO. The one where he wrote directly to me. The email was dated June 14th at 2:15 in the afternoon. Garrison's CFO, Robert Chen, had sent it after a particularly tough call about pricing tiers and payment schedules. Subject line. Revised proposal final thoughts. The message read, "Claire, I appreciate your patience on this complex issue. We trust your judgment on the revised structure completely. Let's move forward with option B as discussed." It was sent directly to my email address. Mark wasn't even CC'd on the original message. But when I forwarded it to Mark for visibility and record-keeping, he had immediately replied, all to include Robert. His message: "Glad my team could support your decision-making process. We're committed to this partnership long-term." My team. Support. Robert hadn't responded to that email at all. The chain ended there abruptly. But the board would see that exact phrasing. They would see the original message addressed solely to me. They would see Mark's reply strategically repositioning himself as the leader. They would see the clear pattern. I printed a hard copy of that email on company letterhead and added it to the folder. Then I sealed the envelope carefully. The board meeting was scheduled for a Monday morning at 9 sharp. Mark had been preparing for weeks. He rehearsed his pitch in the conference room multiple times. He had slides printed on expensive cream-colored paper. He wore his best charcoal suit with a red power tie. The meeting was closed door and confidential. Only board members, the CEO, and the candidates could attend. When my name appeared on the invite list as supporting staff, I wasn't even slightly surprised. Mark probably requested it specifically. He wanted me there to answer technical questions if board members needed clarification. I arrived 10 minutes early as always. Mark was already in the room, shaking hands with board members warmly. Confident, relaxed, polished. He had an expensive leather portfolio under his arm. The CEO called the meeting to order officially. 5 board members sat along one side of the long table. Mark and I sat directly across from them. "Mark, the floor is yours," the CEO said. Mark stood slowly. He smiled that practiced smile. "Thank you for this opportunity," he began. He launched into his carefully rehearsed pitch. His vision for client strategy. His leadership philosophy. His proven track record of results. Then he got to Garrison Tech. "This deal represents everything I value professionally," he said confidently. Relationship building. Strategic risk-taking. Long-term vision thinking. He talked for 8 solid minutes about the challenges. The difficult negotiations. The late nights. All in first-person singular. I rebuilt. I strategized. Closed. The board members listened carefully and took notes. Then one of them raised her hand. "Mark, can you walk us through the specific timeline in detail?" she asked. Mark nodded confidently. "Of course. We initiated contact in January. First face-to-face meeting was February. Contract signed in September. And the major negotiation points." Mark opened his portfolio professionally. There were several key moments. Pricing tiers. Delivery schedules. Performance guarantees. Another board member leaned forward. "Who personally led the client calls?" "I oversaw all major client interactions," Mark said smoothly. The woman who asked the first question scrolled through something on her tablet. She stopped, scrolled back up slowly. Her expression changed noticeably. She looked up at Mark, then directly at me. "Claire," she said, "can you clarify something for us?" Mark started to answer. "I can explain the context. I'm asking Claire directly," she said firmly. Every head in the room turned toward me. I sat up straighter. "What would you like to know?" She turned her tablet around to face me. "This email is from June 14th. Robert Chen addresses you directly about revised pricing. Can you explain your specific role in that conversation?" Kept my voice completely calm. "I led that negotiation call personally. It lasted 90 minutes. We discussed 3 different pricing models before settling on the tiered structure." Mark's voice cut in quickly. "Claire supported that process under my direct supervision and direction." "Mark," another board member interrupted sharply. "Let her finish speaking." The room went completely quiet. The woman with the tablet spoke again. "How many direct calls did you personally have with Garrison's team?" I didn't hesitate for a second. 42 calls over 9 months. Most were between 45 minutes and 2 hours long. "And these were scheduled by you?" "Yes. I have all the calendar invites if you need confirmation." She nodded slowly, then looked directly at Mark. "Mark, Why are the strategic revisions in the proposal documents showing Claire's name in tracked changes? Mark's jaw visibly tightened. Tracked changes can be misleading in collaborative environments. The strategic direction came from me, but the actual document revisions were made by Claire. She executed my vision, Mark said. Did you review each revision before she made it? Silence. Mark shifted his weight. In a collaborative environment, there's trust. I trusted her to implement the strategy. The board member held up her hand. That's a no then. She looked at the others seriously. I'm seeing a clear pattern in these files. Another board member pulled out a different folder. A folder I hadn't given Mark. Mark, the second board member said. I want to ask about another contract. The Patterson account from March. Mark blinked, caught off guard. That was 6 months ago. I know. Bear with me. He opened the folder. Claire, were you involved in that negotiation? Yes, I said simply. What was your specific role? I managed the full contract negotiation. 3 weeks of back and forth on terms and pricing structures. The board member nodded. Mark, in your quarterly report, you wrote that we secured the Patterson account. Can you clarify who we refers to? Mark's confidence was visibly cracking. It was a team effort. Was it really? Claire handled certain operational aspects. Which aspects specifically? Mark hesitated. The negotiation terms. So the entire negotiation. Under my supervision. The board member pulled out a printout. This is an email from Patterson's director. It's addressed to Claire. It says, "Thank you for your patience and creativity in finding terms that work for both sides." He looked up. Does that sound like supervision? Or leadership? Mark didn't answer. The CO cleared his throat loudly. Mark, I'm concerned by the inconsistency here. The room felt smaller and warmer. One board member removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes tiredly. The third board member spoke for the first time. I pulled the Silverman contract from last year, he said quietly. Mark's face went pale white. Same exact pattern. Claire's name is on all the client communications. Claire's revisions in the documents. But your quarterly summary says, I negotiated revised terms personally. That's standard management language in corporate reports. Is it? The board member's voice wasn't angry, just deeply disappointed. Because this isn't about language conventions. This is about accuracy and integrity. Another board member added seriously, we're not questioning whether manager's present team wins. We're questioning whether you've been systematically misrepresenting individual contributions as your own. Mark tried to recover desperately. In leadership roles, you have to take ownership of outcomes. Of other people's work? The words hung heavily in the air. The CEO closed his folder with a snap. I think we need to verify some things before continuing this conversation. He turned to me. Claire, do you have complete records of your client interactions for these projects? Yes, I said. Complete records. Can you provide those to HR by end of day? They're already compiled. I can send them now if needed. The CEO nodded approvingly. Please do that immediately. Mark stared at me. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked genuinely rattled and afraid. The CEO turned to his assistant standing by the door. Contact Robert Chan at Garrison Tech immediately. I want written confirmation of who led their contract negotiation. Right now? The assistant asked uncertainly. Yes. This can't wait another minute. She left the room quickly. The board members sat in heavy, uncomfortable silence. Mark's knee started bouncing rapidly under the table. A tiny, nervous movement he probably didn't even realize he was doing. I kept my hands folded calmly in my lap. The CEO checked his watch. This shouldn't take long. Robert is usually very responsive. 3 long minutes passed in silence. The assistant returned with her phone in hand. He replied already, sir. She handed the phone to the CEO. He read the message silently. his expression completely neutral. Then he looked up at Mark. Robert says, and I quote, "Claire Bennett led every negotiation personally. She was professional, strategic, and patient throughout. We wouldn't have signed without her expertise." The CEO set the phone down carefully. He goes on to say that while he's met you once briefly at a company event, all substantive conversations were exclusively with Claire. Mark opened his mouth. Nothing came out. The board member with glasses spoke quietly. "That's pretty definitive testimony." Nobody moved or spoke. Then the CEO said, "Mark, I think we need to pause this conversation immediately." The meeting didn't end immediately after that. The CEO asked several more probing questions. Mark tried desperately to explain that leadership means delegating effectively, that managers naturally get credit for team wins, that this was all a big misunderstanding. But the energy in the room had shifted completely and irreversibly. One board member asked Mark directly, "Did you personally negotiate terms with Garrison Tech's team?" Mark hesitated way too long. "No," he finally admitted. "But I oversaw the strategy." "Did you personally draft the proposal documents?" "Claire drafted them based on my direction." "Did you personally lead the strategy calls?" Silence. The CEO closed his notebook with finality. "I think we have what we need here." He turned to the board. "I'm recommending we postpone the VP decision until HR completes a formal review of Mark's submitted materials." One board member nodded immediately. "Agreed completely." Another said, "We need to verify claims across all his reported projects from the past 3 years." Mark's face was red. "This is ridiculous. I've been with this company for 15 years. Which is exactly why this is so disappointing," the CEO said quietly. He stood. "This meeting is concluded. Mark, please make yourself available for HR follow-up interviews." Mark grabbed his portfolio and walked out without looking at anyone. I stayed seated quietly. The CEO turned to me. "Claire, thank you for your clarity and honesty today." He nodded. As I gathered my things, one board member stopped me at the door. "That took real courage," she said softly. I didn't feel courageous. I felt exhausted and tired. The next morning I arrived at work at 8 a.m. sharp as usual. Mark's office door was closed. His lights were completely off. By 9:30, people started whispering in the hallways and break rooms. By 10, IT had disabled his executive access to the client database and email systems. I didn't hear this through official channels. I heard it because someone from IT mentioned it casually in the break room while getting coffee. "Sullivan's been locked out completely," he said to a coworker. "Whole email account is under formal review." The promotion decision was officially postponed indefinitely. A company-wide email went out from HR at 11. "Leadership transition in progress. Updates to follow." That was it. No details. No explanation. But everyone in the building knew something serious had happened. At lunch, I saw Mark in the parking lot loading cardboard boxes into his car trunk. He didn't look at me. I didn't approach him. By 2 p.m., his office was completely empty. No announcement. No goodbye email. Just silence spreading through the floor like a cold front moving in. I sat at my desk and tried to focus on regular work. My phone buzzed with a text. A text from an unknown number. I opened it curiously. The text was short and direct. "Is this Claire Bennett?" I replied. "Yes." "Who is this?" "Robert Chen. Garrison Tech got your number from the company directory. Do you have a minute to talk?" My heart rate picked up noticeably. I stepped into an empty conference room and called him immediately. "Claire, hi," Robert said. His voice was warm and friendly. "I heard there was some confusion at Meridian about the contract details." "Something like that," I said carefully. "Well, I want to be completely clear with you. When I spoke to your CEO this morning, I told him exactly what happened. You led that negotiation from start to finish. You earned that deal." "Thank you," I said quietly. "Actually," Robert continued, "that's the main reason I'm calling. Our company is expanding rapidly. We're building out a strategic partnerships team. and we need someone who truly understands complex negotiations. He paused deliberately. We want you, Claire. Director of Strategic Partnerships. Full benefits package. Salary starts at $140,000. I sat down hard in the chair. That was more than double what I made now. You don't have to answer today, Robert said. But I wanted you to know we see your value clearly. Even if Meridian didn't. I stared at the blank wall. Can I think about it? Yes. Absolutely. Take your time. We hung up. I sat alone in that conference room for 10 full minutes. Then I called him back. Robert. It's Claire. I accept your offer. I gave Meridian 2 weeks' notice the next day. HR scheduled an exit interview. The woman conducting it was professional but noticeably uncomfortable. We're sorry to see you go, she said formally. Is there anything we could have done differently? I thought carefully about that question. Yes, I said. You could have looked at the actual work, not just the person presenting it. She wrote that down without responding. On my last day, several coworkers stopped by my desk to say goodbye. A few knew what happened. Most didn't know the details. One woman from accounting hugged me tightly. I heard you're going to Garrison. Good for you. I packed my desk items into a small cardboard box. Photos, coffee mug, my nameplate. The VP position at Meridian was eventually filled by someone from outside the company. Mark's formal review concluded that he had systematically misrepresented contributions on multiple projects. He was quietly let go with a severance package and a non-disclosure agreement. I heard through former coworkers that he struggled to find another position. The industry is smaller than people think. Word travels fast. I didn't follow up. Didn't check his LinkedIn profile. Didn't think about him. I was too busy building something completely new. Garrison Tech's offices were downtown in a modern glass building with beautiful views of the harbor. My first day, Robert met me in the lobby personally. Welcome to the team, he said warmly, shaking my hand. My office was on the 10th floor. Real walls, not a cubicle. A door that actually closed. My name on a placard outside. Claire Bennett, Director of Strategic Partnerships. I spent the first week meeting my new team. 3 junior strategists who would report directly to me. They were sharp, eager, and respectful. One of them asked during our first meeting, "How did you land the Meridian contract?" That negotiation was really complicated. It was, I agreed. But I learned that complicated problems need patient strategy. And thorough documentation. She laughed. Documentation. Always document your work carefully, I said. You never know when you'll need proof of what you accomplished. Within 2 months, I closed 2 new partnerships worth a combined $5 million. Robert called me into his office after the second one. You're exactly what we needed, he said sincerely. For the first time in years, I felt genuinely seen. Not as support. Not as execution. As a leader. 6 months into my new role, I presented to Garrison's executive board. Different building. Different boardroom. But the same nervous energy before a big pitch. I walked in with my presentation loaded and my notes organized. This time my name was on the first slide in large letters. Good morning, I began confidently. I'm Claire Bennett, and today I'll walk you through our Q4 partnership strategy. No one interrupted. No one took credit. No one repositioned my work as theirs. I presented my analysis, my projections, my recommendations. When I finished, the CFO nodded approvingly. Strong work, Claire. Let's move forward with this. That was it. No drama. No theft. Just respect. I gathered my materials and left the room. In the hallway, I passed a mirror and caught my reflection. I looked different somehow. Not older. Not harder. Hummer. I had spent years thinking I needed to be louder to be heard. More aggressive to be respected. More visible to matter. But that wasn't it at all. I just needed to be in a room where people valued the work itself, not just the performance. I didn't need revenge. I needed evidence. And when the time came, I let the truth speak for itself. Because this time they already knew who closed the deal. And I never had to raise my voice.